Hello, everyone. Sign of Life here. We're going to talk to you today about the Great War of the Fallout series. Okay, we're going to start with the prelude, guys. The socio-political build-up to the Great War begins in 2051 when the United States carried out an invasion of Mexico to seize the southern neighborhood's oil fields, unofficially sparking an era of fragmenting global relations called the Resource Wars. The European Commonwealth would later follow America's lead in enacting their own invasion of the Middle East, to far less favorable results in December 2053. A nuclear detonation decimated the city of Tel Aviv, marking the first use of WMDs since Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. Earlier that same year, the new plague began to spread, leading to West Tech being commissioned to develop a cure. The United States government began enforcing quarantines and initiated Project Safe House. The results of Europe's invasion led to the collapse of the United Nations and skyrocketing global price of oil. Yet it ultimately bore no fruit at all when the oil fields dried up before the end of the European Civil War in 2060. Europe's worsening state spurred the United States to decide that Alaska's oil fields were vulnerable, leading to a military buildup in Northwest state to defend them. In 2066, an indefinite embargo was placed by the U.S. on the export of petroleum. Rival nation China retaliated. Retaliated a full-scale military invasion of Alaska Territory by the People Liberation Army. That same year, igniting the Sino-American War. Canada was a major party in the conflict between the U.S. and China. So the country initially supported the logistics of the American war effort and the economy, cost, and underlying friction eventually wore on the populace, and their initial resistance against the U.S. military presence spiraled into open revolt against America interface. After a failed attempt by Canadian freedom fighters to sabotage the Alaskan pipeline they were working to defend, America responded by turning on its northern neighbor and enacting military annexation of its territory, ending in Canada's dissolution as a sovereign nation. Meanwhile, the West Tech's research into a cure for the West of the new plague was sidelined by the government instead of having their research turn towards the weaponization of the FEV, a prospect which terrified the Chinese, which we'll get into later on the FEV virus. While their defense strategy was concentrated in Alaska, the U.S. launched a counteroffensive to strike against mainland China in 2074. The federal government was able to fund a standing army, the likes of which the United States never had seen before, with the advanced T-51 power armor being deployed to both fronts in 2076. The entrance of the power armor to the battlefield served to tip the balance in America's favor, and decisive battle of Anchorage was won in January 2077, with Chinese forces being evicted from American soil. However, this was the effects of causing the global situation to transition from a stalemate in Alaska to the stalemate in China Diplomacy also stalled as peace talks between the countries scheduled after the American victory in Anchorage went nowhere, stoking fears of nuclear war. Unbeknownst to the populace at large, the leaders of corporate America devised their own end goal for the fates of the world. Sometime in the mid to late 2070s, Vault-Tec hosted a meeting at their industrial headquarters in Southern California. Attended by figures from multiple powerful groups in the region like Robco Industries, Westech, Repcon Aerospace, and Big MT executives Barb Howard and Bud Askins revealed the joint effort project Safe House intended to construct vaults to protect the American populace in the face of a nuclear war. However, with corporation of the corporate heads, Vault-Tec planned to turn many vaults into social experiments to help design a perfect post-nuclear society under their complete control. Against questions of how they plan to ensure such an outcome, Howard made the suggestion that they directly instigate the apocalypse themselves. Towards the later 2070s, America's ruling class saw the inevitable approaching and disappeared from the public view. Sequestering within their protected bunkers, the members of the enclave, including the U.S. president and key members of the government and military leadership, isolated themselves from the mainland aboard a decommissioned oil rig. Sorry about that, guys. As well as other locations such as the White Springs bunker in Appalachia, eventually serving as the progenitors of their faction post-war. On October 10th, 2077, the ranking commanders at Mariposa military base became aware that the West-Tech scientists had been experimenting on military prisoners for their FEV research. He had a mental breakdown, leaving Captain Roger Maxson in charge of the subsequent investigation. Maxson will play a big part in this later. We'll talk about him as an individual. Maxson interrogated the scientists, including lead researcher Leon von Felden, obtained confessions, and summarily executed them all for their crimes against humanity. On October 20th, Maxson issued an open declaration of secession from the United States to try and force a response from the government, but never received a response in succeeding weeks. All right, now we'll talk about the events of the Great War. The Great War began and ended on Saturday, October 23rd, 2077. Unknown submersible objects were sighted at 0300 EST off the coast of California by the United States Pacific Fleet. At 3:37 EST, a squadron of high altitude bombers were sighted off the Bering Strait and believed to be Chinese. At least one Chinese stealth submarine, the Yangtze, moved close to the American East Coast, launching all warheads save for one due to a malfunction. 6 hours later, at 9:13 EST, the Integrated Operational Nuclear Detection System detected the first 4 missiles launched at the United States. And the United States went to DEFCON 2. 4 minutes later, NORAD sealed the fate of the world at 9:26 EST. The president ordered a retaliatory strike, according to scenario MXC91. Military bombs hit Pennsylvania and New York at 9:42 EST, preceded by the West Coast not long beforehand. The bombs continued to drop, and 5 minutes later at 9:47 EST, Washington, D.C. was hit and most American facilities went offline. The nuclear exchange continued for 2 hours, and both China and the United States suffered catastrophic losses. The standard strategic nuclear warhead used in the Great War ranged from 200 to 750 kilotons in explosive yield, with a high yield variance found on Chinese submarines. This was actually far worse for the Earth, as the lower yield warheads deposited more soil and debris into the lower atmosphere, resulting in a much more concentrated fallout. That eventually enveloped the planet. The entire world was blanketed with multiple nuclear strikes, and the world and its entire ecosystem would inevitably changed for centuries to come. Thank you for listening to that, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what we should try next.